It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Most people are having to haul themselves out of bed today and go through the whole process once again. The psychology of buying a property, it really does mess with the brain. Biggest buying decision, of course, untold amount of stress levels and anxiety, more ups and downs than a roller coaster, never ending. So yeah, good luck with today. I hope that falls the way that you wanted to. Housing Minister Claire O'Neil, she is pushing harder for higher density housing, arguing that Australia simply can't solve its affordability crisis by building endless suburban sprawl. What is your take on this? The government wants more apartments, townhouses and mixed-use developments closer to transport, jobs and infrastructure, which all makes common sense, particularly when you look overseas. Supporters say that it's the only realistic way to increase supply quickly, while critics argue communities are resisting rapid urban change. But change is needed, as Claire O'Neil suggests.
I've been involved in town planning for a really long time. I was a mayor 20 years ago and, we were having arguments about where housing would go. They have very little resemblance for the public discussion that we're having about density in housing. We need to build more dense cities in our country. Full stop. There is no country in the world, anything like Australia, that has affordable housing and the density issues that we confront. It is a part of the solution here and it's a very important part of the solution. What I increasingly see when I talk to most Australians about this is that for the first time, people are making the connection between the housing development down the street from them and the capacity of their children to get into a home of their own. And that's the connection that needs to be made. And so I wouldn't certainly be on my feet here being sharp with Australians about this. I just think we need to keep explaining to them. Density can be a fantastic thing for our cities. You see huge improvements in amenity when you see good density. I live in the beautiful suburb of Oakleigh in Melbourne. If I went to any city in Europe which was as far away from the city as I am, I'd step out of the train station and it would be medium density housing, flourishing local economy, and people getting to share in the fantastic life that we get to live in my suburb. When I get off the train now, it's mainly one story as far as the eye can see. And we do need to fix that if we're going to get on top of this for the country.
So do you agree with Claire O'Neil on that issue? Of course, our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. What is your take there around what Claire O'Neil is saying?
I think it's common sense that we do need different kinds of housing available, apartments or townhouses and houses, single family houses. But Australians do have a preference towards single family houses. And I think that it's important that we have those and we have that option for Australians and for their families to raise kids with a backyard or a front yard. I think it's interesting that the minister is trying to encourage Australians or tell Australians that they need to draw a connection between medium density housing and affordability or the ability of their children to buy houses. This government seems to want to do anything but draw a connection between levels of migration and housing affordability. We do need some more supply, and building more houses, building more apartments, building more townhouses is undoubtedly a good thing. But why don't we talk about the demand side of the equation as well? Why don't we talk about the fact that to build those new developments, it will take years. And in the meantime, the fastest, most effective lever that we could pull to ease that pressure on property prices and help people get into the housing market would be to bring down those levels of migration, which have been running at hundreds of thousands per year for the last few years, way out of whack with what we've had historically in Australia, and certainly, way out of whack with the kind of 1990s level of immigration that we were used to.
And the government has extended the ban on foreign investors buying established Australian homes until June of 2029, arguing that it gives local buyers a fairer shot in the market already under pressure. Will this actually, what do you think, improve affordability for everyday Australians?
I think a ban on foreign buyers, it's a common sense measure that I think Australians will get behind. And they will say, why should people who are physically overseas be able to buy properties in Australia when I can't afford a house? It's a good measure that I would support, and, props to the government for doing that. But we've brought in 1.3 million people into Australia over the last 5 years, and all those people are in Australia, they're able to buy housing. So, the numbers for foreign buyers, people who are physically overseas trying to buy property in Australia are quite small. So the effect effect will be quite marginal. But why don't we talk about the plans to bring another 1.2 million people over the next 5 years and the impact that that's going to have on property prices. I think until the government really starts dealing seriously with levels of migration and talking about the impacts that levels of migration have on house prices and rent costs as well, we're not really going to get anywhere with this issue of housing affordability.
Let's go to Charles Tarby, who we're going to catch up with this morning. He is a busy boy. He's the Managing Director at Century 21 Australasia. He's also the owner of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Australia and New Zealand. And Charles, welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. You were telling me that you've been in the industry for 5 decades. Gee, that's a long time, Charles.
It goes so quick, and I think a lot of agents don't realise it, Craig. You know, when I started at 17 years of age, and I thought I'll be there for 5 years, make as much money as I can and retire. That's a ridiculous dream, even if you do achieve it. But before you know it, you're there for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and this is my 55th year in the real estate industry.
I want you to take us back, because I think this is going to be really interesting this morning. Take us back to the first day that you were on the job as a real estate agent, what that year was, you know, green-eyed, about to hopefully start this career as a real estate agent. What can you remember?
I remember it vividly because it was the end of 72, just finished boarding school in Goulburn, came down to the Big Smoke. My sister was a property manager in a real estate office in Marrickville, inner West Sydney, and she said, stop sitting around waiting for your HSC results, come in and help me clean some flats. So I did in the first couple of weeks, and then she said, look, one of the property managers is going away, put a shirt and tie on and come and help me in the office with admin tasks. And that's how it started.
A lot of entrepreneurs, successful CEOs, business owners, they do have this creative streak, and that is probably played right into the lane of going into real estate. Do you feel that assisted you?
Most definitely, because you see things differently. You do. I mean, if you're black and white, you're rational, you've got a place, you've got a very important place in business to play. If you can find a good mix of both of those, and I was fortunate enough to be taught at a very, very, very early age to write things down and to set aside things that I might want to do and put them in writing. And I think combining those two things has helped me greatly to build the business that I have today.
When did you sort of get to that elevated decision where you said, right, you know, I'm going to start buying up the franchises? Is that what happened?
Well, what happened was in 77, when I was 21, 22, I think it is, I had the chance to buy a real estate agency. I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I'd made a little bit of money out of buying a house when I was working in real estate, and I lived in it. I got some good capital growth, had a chance to buy the office I was working in. I always tell everybody I live by the philosophy that anything is possible when you don't know what you're doing, because if I knew what I was doing, I'd have took myself out of it. And so that office expanded to 5 offices by the time I was about 26, 27, and I started a franchise called Combined Real Estate, which I grew to 56 offices. And in 1993, the American parent of Century 21 were looking for somebody to take the brand for what they called Australasia. They'd had some hiccups here in Australia, and they came to the launch of my second book at a seminar I was doing, took me aside during a lunch break and asked if I was becoming a trainer and if I wanted to sell. And I said, no, I'm a trainer and an author, because this is how I prospect for agents and potential franchised offices. So they said, would I consider merging with them, which I said I would if they'd give me the option to buy it out. And in 1995, on the 29th September, I exercised the option and took out 100% back to Australian ownership for Century 21 Australasia.
When you go off and you decide, hey, I'm going to go into the UAE, I'm going to go into India, does that get you inspired? Is that like, yeah, this is great, I'm going into a new market here, renewed enthusiasm?
Well, I think it's boring otherwise, Craig. If you don't have something on the go all the time. My family have given up on me. They claim that every Christmas I seem to make a decision to buy into something. That's probably never going to change for me. And also those markets are different. They have an established base, just like any other real estate base has. It's all about people, homes, supply, demand. The markets have got their own idiosyncrasies. So we go into the UAE, and without franchising, it'll be company owned, and Dubai is part of it. Abu Dhabi is even bigger, but that marketplace is representing off the plan, but from a different direction. The established market is coming stronger now because with this war, a lot of people are reevaluating whether they want to keep property there. So there's a whole range of different challenges.
Now, according to some recent data from Cotality, auction clearance rates across the combined capital cities have continued trending lower through May of this year, with preliminary clearance rates recently shifting to the mid 50% range, which we have been talking about. It is a big difference from 2021, when clearance rates regularly pushed above the 80% mark, and fresh figures from the PropTrack Home Price Index by the REA Group show Melbourne's median house prices softened, along with Sydney values also softening during May. Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, now they continue to outperform due to stronger population growth and tighter housing market. We are in this multi-speed market rather than one national story around the country. You know, hard to believe that the year is flying by already into June, and we've already seen so much happen.
My mum used to say, the older we get, the faster time goes. And I used to try to deny that, but I reckon she's onto it. This year has gone quick, I'm telling you.
And if we have a look at some of what the economists are saying and market analysts, they are warning that the slowdown that we're currently in, it could easily go across next year into 2027. And other market commentary coming from Morgan Stanley and SQM Research, they are saying that interest rates, investor uncertainty and weaker sentiment could place further downward pressure on prices in Sydney and Melbourne. But is that good for regional markets like yours?
I haven't had not one single person in our industry that I work with say that this is a positive budget announcement. It could possibly be one of the worst budget announcements we've seen, and it certainly isn't ideal for the real estate ecosystem. Our regional areas have always been more affordable than our city centres, and that's what's been driving, you could call it an exodus for some time, from people wanting to get out of the capital cities because of affordability, and now understand that they can work remotely. So if you can work remotely, why not live in a more affordable regional area and enjoy the lifestyle that often comes with it? An idyllic place to live with fantastic natural assets, and we were undervalued for decades, really. That has changed, unquestionably. I'd pull up some data just to have a look at where we're sitting in the average medium sale price as at May. Our average medium sale price for a home today in Hervey Bay is now at $840,000, and a unit is sitting around $600,000. And that supports the fact that we have seen over 13.5% growth across our housing market and nearly 16% growth in the last 12 months on units. So again, underpinned by that ongoing undersupply in our local housing stock. And if you review or have a look around Hervey Bay at the amount of development and new estates and construction that's going ahead, our market is still very buoyant, and we're still more affordable than most of the areas south of us, unquestionably.
Now, you were saying to me, though, off air, that the market has gone backwards. Are two things happening at the same time?
In demand, yeah. So we haven't seen, obviously, supporting what I just said, we haven't seen any downward trend in pricing, but unquestionably, since, again, and it is the doom and gloom media that impacts on a lot of people's thought processes. As of really May, it came in early when everyone started talking about the pending budget release. We've seen easily a 50% downturn in general buyer interest across the board. If you are a buyer and you are ready to purchase, there is actually currently less demand with other prospective buyers on properties. Whereas pre-May, it was very busy, and just about every property, particularly in that $800,000 price point, they were going to multiple offers.
Yeah, so that is quite a turn down, but it just goes to show that the regional areas are starting to follow. I think fair to say that there was some sort of stability in the regions. Now that's a different story. So if you are in Sydney, Melbourne, looking at getting away for a few days, you jump on one of those direct flights into Hervey Bay, onto the Fraser Coast, because it is a buyer's market, very much so. What you're saying, Scott?
Because there's less competition. I won't so much say that it's a buyer's market, but it's definitely going to suit buyers more whilst there's less competition. I think it's just a lack of confidence across the board. Something we have seen too is I haven't seen as many subject to sale buyers in a long time. I couldn't even tell you. I'd reckon nearly 3 out of every 5 buyers we're dealing with are subject to the sale of their current property. And again, that just supports that lack of confidence. People are just not confident to take that next move without the certainty of knowing, one, if they sell, they can buy the property they want to move into next, and currently they're going to have a little bit less competition. So it is a time for buyers to act if they're able to do so.
The biggest changes that agents are talking about in Melbourne is the decline in buyer competition in some premium suburbs. Properties that may have attracted 10 bidders 2 years ago, say, they're now seeing 3 or 4 maybe serious buyers instead. Is that how you're currently seeing on the ground?
Indeed. So we are seeing a slowdown in Melbourne, no question about that. In fact, one might argue that the benefits of the COVID sugar hit has probably been removed now, and we're seeing prices probably returning to almost pre-pandemic days in some areas. The rush to the marketplace that buyers were experiencing during that COVID time really has absolutely abated in my view.
Yeah, and vendors are also becoming more cautious, aren't they? We've talked about that a lot when selling properties. More homes are now going to private treaty or expressions of interest campaigns instead of straight auctions, particularly in the higher-end suburbs. You're an auctioneer. You're seeing this firsthand. So is the auction pressure starting to work against vendors in this current cycle? What do you think?
It depends on price guide. It depends on motivation. I'm still an advocate of auctions. The reason is that even in the current clearance rates of 50-odd%, if you said to a client, look, in 4 Saturdays' time, you've got a 1 in 2 chance of moved on with your plans. Still not bad, right? And if the client has, I have a test for auctions. Does the client suit an auction? Does a property suit an auction? If one of those answers is no, then you proceed to another method. But it's a great way of getting clarity around a sale process. Private sales can drift. They can just sort of keep wandering on. An auction really, as I try to explain to my clients, view an auction as a mechanism, not an outcome. And what I mean by that, it's designed to get buyers to make decisions. On the day of the auction, yes, I want it, or no, I don't. Both decisions are good because it gives you clear pathways as to what to do next. And the problem is with the private sales is they can drift and drift. And one of the only mechanisms that you therefore have, if they're drifting, is the mechanism of price and lowering the price. So I still am an advocate of auctions, but it's got to suit the owner, it's got to suit the property.
Yeah, and just before I let you go, because you are an auctioneer, throw up a couple of tips for these people over the next few weeks that are going to be walking into an auction around the country. A couple of things maybe not to do, Tom. You know, you've seen this. You've seen plenty of people operating in the wrong way to approach an auction.
Something that happened to me just on the weekend. We had clients there to buy a particular property, had a few clients ready to bid on a property, and they didn't. Now, I think that's a big mistake. I think that if you're there to bid, at least put yourself in a position to negotiate with the agent. And that involves you putting your hand in the air and committing to that bid. Because what will happen is you'll get taken inside and dealt with fairly and exclusively. Now, on the weekend, we had 2 buyers that we knew wanted to buy it and neither of them did anything. So when we passed it in, we weren't obligated to any buyer. It's a more difficult process for the purchaser because they're not controlling the narrative if they're not the highest bidder.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.